First Contact's Fatal Assumption. The Meridian Confederation's first detailed scan of Earth left its Supreme Council thoroughly unimpressed. High Admiral Kovacs, her crystalline form refracting the soft light of the council chamber, gestured dismissively at the holographic projection of the blue planet. Another primitive civilization, she announced to the assembled representatives of 12,000 star systems. They've barely managed to establish a permanent presence on their own satellite, and their atmospheric pollution levels suggest minimal environmental control capabilities. The council chamber, carved from a single massive asteroid and adorned with the technological achievements of dozens of species, hummed with murmurs of agreement. Beings of pure energy floated alongside silicon-based life forms and creatures that existed partially in other dimensions. All of them had achieved what they considered the pinnacle of evolution: perfect harmony with technology and nature. Ambassador Zix 427, a quantum intelligence representing the machine worlds, pulsed with calculated interest. Yet they demonstrate remarkable progress given their limited existence. Merely 10,000 years from basic agriculture to rudimentary spaceflight. That's unprecedented in our records. Precisely why we should study them from a safe distance, countered High Admiral Kovacs. Such rapid development without proper guidance could be dangerous. They're like children playing with antimatter. The debate might have continued indefinitely if not for researcher Thal, a member of the ancient archival species. His species had documented the rise and fall of countless civilizations across the galaxy. I propose a controlled first contact. We'll send our most advanced diplomatic vessel, the Stellar Wisdom, to their orbital station. Show them what true civilization looks like. The Council approved the motion with the casual confidence of beings who had never known true failure. The Stellar Wisdom, a ship that was less a vessel and more a living work of art, departed for Earth's orbit within the day. Its hull was composed of self-repairing quantum crystals that could deflect any known weapon. Its crew represented the finest minds in the Confederation, each chosen for their expertise in handling primitive species. They arrived at Earth's International Space Station expecting to find awestruck primitives. Instead, they found something far more interesting: humans who were distinctly unimpressed. Station Commander Sarah Chen's first words to the alien delegation set the tone. "Welcome to low Earth orbit. I trust you've completed your debris avoidance calculations. We've got about 20,000 tracked objects up here, and we'd hate for your beautiful ship to get scratched." The alien delegation, led by Ambassador Ven of the Silicon Worlds, struggled to process this response. Their ship was the pride of 12,000 worlds, yet this human spoke to them as if they were tourists who had wandered into a construction zone. "We come bearing the knowledge of the cosmos," Ambassador Ven announced, their crystalline form shifting through colors of authority and wisdom. "We are prepared to guide your species toward true civilization." Commander Chen's response was interrupted by a warning klaxon. The station's proximity alerts blared as a piece of debris from an old satellite suddenly shifted orbit. The Stellar Wisdom's advanced systems registered the threat too late. Their calculations hadn't accounted for the chaotic nature of Earth's orbital space. What happened next would be debated in the Confederation for centuries to come. As the debris hurtled toward them, the humans didn't freeze or panic. Instead, Commander Chen and her crew executed a series of emergency protocols with practiced precision. They adjusted the station's orientation, activated emergency shields that the Confederation had dismissed as primitive, and coordinated with ground control to track the debris's trajectory. The Stellar Wisdom, despite its quantum crystal hull and advanced AI, suffered a direct hit. The debris, moving at over 17,000 miles per hour, compromised their supposedly impenetrable shields. What the Confederation hadn't understood was that sometimes the simplest physics, mass times velocity, could overcome the most advanced technology. As emergency alerts filled the Stellar Wisdom's command center, it was the humans who organized the rescue effort. Commander Chen and her team, operating with what the aliens considered obsolete equipment, coordinated an emergency response that saved dozens of Confederation lives. They did it without quantum computers, without neural interfaces, and without waiting for consensus from 12,000 worlds. "We deal with this sort of thing all the time," Chen explained as she helped evacuate the damaged sections of the alien vessel. "Space is dangerous. You either adapt or you die." The Confederation delegation watched in stunned silence as human engineers, wearing what appeared to be primitive pressure suits, improvised repairs on their advanced hull using materials that shouldn't have worked, but somehow did. The humans combined simple chemical adhesives with basic mechanical principles in ways that the Confederation's AI systems insisted were impossible. As the crisis subsided, Ambassador Van made a disturbing discovery. The humans hadn't just managed the emergency, they had learned from it. Within hours, Earth's various space agencies were already implementing new protocols based on the incident. They were adapting, evolving their procedures in real time. High Admiral Kovacs received the preliminary report with growing concern. The humans hadn't been awed by Confederation technology. They hadn't begged for guidance or knowledge. Instead, they had treated the most advanced ship in the galaxy like any other damaged vessel in need of assistance. But most troubling of all was what Commander Chen said during the debriefing. "You know, if you'd just asked, we could have warned you about the debris field. We've been dealing with it for decades. Sometimes the hard way is the best teacher." The Confederation had arrived expecting to find primitives in need of enlightenment. Instead, they found something far more dangerous, a species that had turned their disadvantages into strengths, their challenges into opportunities, and their limitations into launching points for innovation. As the Stellar Wisdom limped back to Confederation space for repairs, High Admiral Kovacs made a note in the official first contact record. "Exercise extreme caution with Earth. They are not primitive. They are something else entirely. They are survivors, innovators, and most dangerously of all, they are teachers who learn from every failure." The Confederation had always believed that advancement meant rising above primitive struggles. The humans had shown them something different. Sometimes the struggle itself was the path to advancement. And that made them more dangerous than any species the Confederation had encountered in 10 million years of exploration. The hidden weapon. The Stellar Wisdom's humiliating return to Confederation space sparked a crisis unprecedented in their million-year history. Within the crystalline spires of the Central Archives, the highest council ever assembled gathered to address what many now called the human problem. High Admiral Kovacs' report echoed through the chamber, each word carefully chosen. "The humans didn't just repair our ship, they improved it. They identified structural weaknesses in our quantum crystal matrix that our own engineers missed. Using what we considered primitive tools, they reinforced these points with a carbon-based compound that our sensors initially dismissed as ineffective." The assembled leaders shifted uncomfortably. A species that could spot weaknesses in Confederation technology presented more than just a diplomatic embarrassment. It represented a potential threat. Researcher Thal, his ancient form shimmering with concern, projected a series of data streams into the shared consciousness of the Council. "We've analyzed their information networks. Their entertainment media, what they call science fiction, consistently depicts scenarios where less advanced humans triumph over superior alien forces. They don't just imagine victory, they obsessively plan for it." Ambassador Zix 427's quantum circuits pulsed with alarm. "You mean they've been preparing for us, even before they knew we existed?" "Not precisely," Thal corrected. "They prepare for everything. Their military simulations account for scenarios we would consider absurd. They plan for biological warfare, nuclear devastation, artificial intelligence rebellion, and even temporal paradoxes. But here's what's truly disturbing. They don't just plan for victory. They plan for survival in defeat." The council chamber erupted in confused discussions. The concept was alien to them. The Confederation's member species had all evolved past the need for such primitive survival instincts. They had achieved perfect harmony with their environments, eliminating the need to adapt to failure. A new hologram appeared in the chamber's center. surveillance footage from the Stellar Wisdom incident. It showed human engineers working in vacuum conditions, their supposedly primitive suits allowing them to function in space far longer than Confederation environmental systems. The humans worked tirelessly, improvising solutions with limited resources. Observe their problem-solving methodology, Kovacs pointed out. When conventional tools fail, they immediately improvise. When standard procedures prove inadequate, they create new ones. They demonstrate a form of intelligence we've never encountered, one born from constant adaptation to failure. Ambassador Venn, still shaken from the Earth encounter, added their perspective. During the crisis, I accessed their historical records. Their entire civilization is built on a foundation of near disasters. They've survived ice ages, plagues, wars, and environmental catastrophes. Each time, they emerged stronger, having learned from their failures. The Council's attention turned to Dr. Lurix, the Confederation's leading genopsychologist. Her gaseous form condensed with intensity as she spoke. We've identified what we believe to be humanity's hidden weapon, their psychological architecture. Unlike every advanced species we've encountered, humans never achieved harmony with their environment. Instead, they developed an almost parasitic relationship with chaos itself. She continued, projecting images of human achievements born from disaster. The same psychology that makes them constantly prepare for catastrophe also drives them to turn those preparations into innovations. They don't just survive problems, they weaponize the solutions. A junior researcher interrupted, their crystalline form flickering with confusion. But surely their primitive technology limits their ability to affect us. Their weapons can't penetrate our shields. Their computers can't breach our firewalls. That's precisely the problem, Dr. Lurix countered. We keep focusing on their technology while ignoring their true advantage. The humans don't need advanced technology to be dangerous. They've turned their very limitations into strengths. When they can't overpower a problem, they outthink it. When they can't outthink it, they outlast it. The council chamber fell silent as surveillance footage showed human children playing what they called games, simulated problems with multiple solutions, training their young to think creatively from their earliest years. High Admiral Kovacs's crystalline form darkened with concern. We've made a critical error in our first contact protocols. We assumed that showing them our advanced technology would impress them. Instead, we've given them something far more dangerous, a challenge. The Admiral's next words sent shivers through the assembled leaders. Our preliminary analysis suggests they've already begun adapting their technology based on their brief exposure to our systems. They're not copying our solutions. They're improving them, finding ways to achieve similar results with their primitive resources. Dr. Lurix concluded the session with a warning that would be recorded in the Confederation archives as a turning point in galactic history. We must understand this. Humanity's greatest weapon isn't their technology, their resources, or even their adaptability. It's their relationship with failure itself. Where we see disaster, they see opportunity. Where we see limitations, they see challenges to overcome. And most dangerously of all, they enjoy it. As the council debated their next move, they failed to notice that several of their younger members had begun asking dangerous questions. What if harmony wasn't the pinnacle of evolution? What if constant adaptation, despite its chaos and discomfort, offered a different kind of advancement? The Confederation had discovered humanity's hidden weapon, but they didn't yet realize that mere knowledge of its existence wasn't enough to defend against it. Like a virus that turns a host's own systems against itself, humanity's influence had already begun to spread through the galaxy's most advanced civilization. They had wanted to guide humanity toward their version of perfection. Instead, they were about to learn that perfection itself might be the greatest weakness of all. Breaking point. The Confederation's attempt to quarantine Earth was perhaps their most catastrophic miscalculation yet. They established a blockade of their most advanced ships, creating what they believed to be an impenetrable barrier between humanity and the rest of the galaxy. But they had fundamentally misunderstood what they were trying to contain. They're not even trying to break through. reported Captain Nexus, her energy form fluctuating with confusion as she observed Earth from the flagship Eternal Dominion. They're just watching us. Indeed, humanity's response to being confined to their solar system was not what the Confederation had expected. Instead of protests or attempts at diplomatic negotiation, Earth's various space agencies had turned their telescopes and sensors toward the blockading fleet. They were studying, learning, and most troublingly, experimenting. The first sign that something was wrong came when several Confederation ships reported unusual equipment failures. Nothing critical, just small, inexplicable malfunctions in systems that had been reliable for millennia. The Confederation's engineers dismissed these incidents as random anomalies. That was their second mistake. Dr. Lurix, monitoring human communications, was the first to recognize the pattern. "They're not trying to defeat our technology," she reported to the High Council. "They're trying to understand it. And they're doing it in the most dangerous way possible, through practical experimentation." The humans had discovered that certain frequencies of their primitive radio transmissions could interfere with the Confederation's quantum communication networks. It wasn't enough to disable their systems, but it created microscopic delays in response times. Delays that humans had learned to exploit. Commander Sarah Chen, now leading Earth's Unified Space Defense Initiative, had developed a doctrine she called technological asymmetry. Her thesis was simple. The more advanced a system became, the more vulnerable it was to fundamental disruptions. "Their technology is perfect," she explained to the United Earth Council. "And that's exactly why it's weak. They've eliminated redundancy. They'd forgotten how to function when systems fail. We haven't." The Confederation watched in growing alarm as humans began launching what appeared to be primitive satellites. Thousands of them, created from the simplest materials: aluminum, silicon, basic solar cells. The Confederation's sensors dismissed them as primitive observation platforms. That was their third mistake. These satellites weren't weapons in any traditional sense. Instead, they formed what humanity called the Chaos Network, a system designed not to attack the Confederation's technology, but to introduce an element their perfect systems couldn't handle: unpredictability. The satellites would fail in random patterns, creating clouds of debris that the Confederation's ships had to constantly avoid. They would emit random electromagnetic pulses that played havoc with quantum sensors. They would reflect light and radiation in ways that confused automated targeting systems. "They're not fighting us," High Admiral Kovacs realized too late. "They're changing the environment itself. They're turning space into a place where our perfection becomes a liability." The breaking point came when the humans demonstrated their masterpiece of asymmetrical warfare. They called it the Butterfly Project, named after the chaos theory concept that a butterfly's wings could cause a hurricane. It started small. The Confederation ship detected a minor power fluctuation. In attempting to correct it, their perfect systems triggered a cascade of adjustments. Each adjustment created new variables that their predictive algorithms had to account for. Soon, their quantum computers were caught in an endless loop of trying to achieve the perfect solution to an ever-changing problem. One by one, the Confederation's ships began to suffer from what humans might call analysis paralysis. Their perfect systems, designed for a universe of order and predictability, couldn't handle an environment that continuously defied their fundamental assumptions. "The humans haven't fired a single shot," Ambassador Venn reported to the increasingly desperate council. "They've turned our own perfection into a weapon against us. Every time our systems try to adapt, they introduce new variables. It's like trying to solve an equation where the numbers keep changing." Dr. Lurix's final report to the council was interrupted by news that several younger Confederation species had begun secretly copying human methods. They were deliberately introducing controlled imperfections into their systems, creating what they called adaptive redundancies. "We thought we were containing a primitive species," she said, her form barely maintaining coherence. "Instead, we've exposed the galaxy to a completely different understanding of progress. The humans aren't just surviving in chaos, they're teaching others to do the same. The Confederation faced a terrible choice: maintain their perfect systems and slowly be driven mad by humanity's engineered chaos, or adapt and risk losing the very perfection they had spent millions of years achieving. As the blockade began to falter, not from human attacks, but from the sheer strain of operating in an increasingly unpredictable environment, Commander Chen sent one final message to the Confederation fleet. "We didn't need to develop perfect technology to defeat you. We just needed to help you remember something your civilization forgot long ago. The universe isn't perfect. It never was. True advancement isn't about achieving perfection. It's about thriving in its absence." The Confederation's breaking point wasn't marked by a great battle or a decisive defeat. Instead, it came with the quiet realization that they had achieved something they never intended. They had proven that humanity's primitive approach to survival might represent a kind of advancement they had never considered possible. The question was no longer whether to contain humanity's influence, but whether their own civilization could survive its spread. The impossible victory. The revolution within the Meridian Confederation started not with a bang, but with a question. During an emergency council session, a young quantum intelligence named Pulse 379 asked something that would shatter 12,000 years of assumed wisdom. What if perfection is just another word for stagnation? The chamber erupted in chaos, a state that, until recently, would have been unthinkable in Confederation space. But exposure to human thinking had already begun changing even the most fundamental aspects of their society. The first wave of defections caught the Confederation's leadership completely off guard. Entire star systems, particularly those populated by younger species, began openly adopting human methodologies. They deliberately introduced controlled imperfections into their systems, created redundancies, and most shockingly, began embracing failure as a path to growth. High Admiral Kovacs watched helplessly as her once perfect fleet began to fragment. "They're not just copying human technology," she reported to the increasingly diminished council. "They're copying their mindset. The infection is philosophical, not technological." The humans, for their part, had never intended to defeat the Confederation. They had simply wanted to survive. But their example had triggered something far more powerful than any weapon: doubt. Commander Sarah Chen, now acting as humanity's primary representative to the growing number of defecting Confederation worlds, found herself teaching concepts that humans had taken for granted for millennia. Innovation doesn't come from getting everything right, she explained to a group of Confederation scientists who had secretly contacted Earth. It comes from getting things wrong in interesting ways. The impossible victory began to take shape not through military conquest, but through a fundamental shift in how species across the galaxy viewed progress. The Confederation had achieved what they thought was perfection through the elimination of chaos. Humanity had achieved resilience by embracing it. Researcher Thal, who had spent eons documenting the rise and fall of civilizations, finally understood the pattern. Every species we considered primitive had something we lost: the ability to fail productively. We thought we were eliminating weakness, but we were actually eliminating growth. The turning point came during what would later be known as the Great Experiment, a coalition of defecting Confederation worlds, working with human scientists, demonstrated something revolutionary. By deliberately introducing controlled imperfections into their quantum computing systems, they achieved computational abilities that surpassed the Confederation's perfect computers. "It's like an immune system," explained Dr. Rebecca Chung, the human quantum physicist leading the project. "A system that never faces challenges becomes weak. A system that constantly adapts to new threats becomes stronger." The Confederation's leadership faced an impossible choice: maintain their pursuit of perfection and watch their civilization crumble, or embrace the very chaos they had spent millions of years trying to eliminate. The decision was made for them when their own populations began experimenting with controlled failure, deliberately introducing small imperfections into their perfect systems to study the results. The practice spread like a virus, impossible to contain because it appealed to something fundamental that the Confederation had suppressed: curiosity. "They're not defeating us," Ambassador Van realized during the final council session. "They're freeing us from our own limitations." The impossible victory was completed not with surrender documents or peace treaties, but with a simple acknowledgement. The Confederation's definition of advancement had been fundamentally flawed. Commander Chen's address to the Reformed Council marked the beginning of a new era. "You sought to eliminate chaos from the universe, to achieve perfect harmony. But the universe isn't a machine to be perfected. It's a garden to be cultivated. And gardens need both order and chaos to thrive." The Confederation's mighty fleets, once symbols of technological perfection, were transformed. They began incorporating human-inspired redundancies, deliberately imperfect systems that could adapt and grow. Their quantum computers, once programmed to seek perfect solutions, were redesigned to explore multiple possibilities, including imperfect ones that might lead to unexpected innovations. But perhaps the most profound change was cultural. Species that had spent millennia avoiding failure began to celebrate it, not for the failure itself, but for the growth it enabled. They created simulation environments specifically designed to fail in interesting ways. They developed educational systems that taught adaptation rather than perfection. The impossible victory wasn't humanity conquering the Confederation. It was humanity showing them a different path to advancement. A path that didn't require perfect harmony or flawless execution, but instead thrived on the very chaos they had tried to eliminate. Dr. Lurix's final report to the new council summed up the transformation. "We thought we were about to witness the fall of a great civilization. Instead, we're witnessing its rebirth. The humans didn't defeat us. They evolved us." The Confederation's perfect order had been broken, but from its fragments emerged something far more valuable: a civilization that could grow, adapt, and most importantly, fail its way to new heights of achievement. Humanity's impossible victory wasn't in proving their superiority. It was in showing that true superiority never existed in the first place. There was only adaptation, growth, and the courage to embrace imperfection as a path to something greater than perfection had ever been. Evolution's wild card. 10 years after the Great Transformation, as historians now called it, the galaxy had become unrecognizable to anyone who knew it before. The rigid perfection of the Confederation had given way to something new: a dynamic, evolving network of civilizations united not by their achievements, but by their approach to progress itself. The Archive of Failures, humanity's first major contribution to galactic culture, had become the most visited institution in known space. Species from across the galaxy came to study Earth's history of disasters, mistakes, and subsequent innovations. What had once been viewed as a record of primitive stumbling was now recognized as a blueprint for advancement. Every failure in this archive led to a breakthrough, explained Dr. Marcus Wong, the archive's chief curator, to a group of young Confederation scientists. The Chernobyl disaster advanced our understanding of radiation. The Hindenburg catastrophe improved our aerospace safety. Even our climate crisis pushed us to develop technologies that would later prove crucial for space colonization. The former High Admiral Quax, now serving as a professor at the newly established Institute of Adaptive Development, had become one of the strongest advocates for what she called constructive imperfection. "We thought evolution had an endpoint, a final, perfect state," she told her students, her crystalline form deliberately maintaining small, controlled irregularities. "Humanity showed us that evolution is endless, and perfection is its enemy." The most dramatic changes were visible in Confederation technology. Their once perfect quantum computers now incorporated randomness generators based on human chaos theory. Their ships, previously designed to maintain absolute stability, now featured adaptive systems that could reconfigure themselves based on unexpected challenges. But it was in the realm of artificial intelligence that the most revolutionary changes occurred. The Confederation's AIs, once programmed to seek perfect solutions, were redesigned using principles derived from human neural networks. systems that learned through trial and error, that could make intuitive leaps, and most importantly, that could be wrong in productive ways. Commander Chen, now serving as Earth's ambassador to the reformed Confederation, found herself constantly amazed by how thoroughly humanity's influence had spread. "We never set out to change the galaxy," she reflected during a conference on interspecies development. "We just refused to accept that there was only one path to advancement." The Confederation's younger species, once held back by rigid adherence to traditional development paths, flourished under the new paradigm. They began combining their advanced technology with human-inspired adaptability, creating hybrid systems that surpassed anything either civilization had achieved alone. Perhaps the most profound change was in how species viewed their own development. The Confederation's old classification system, which had ranked civilizations by their technological advancement and system stability, was replaced by a new measure: adaptive capability. A species' true level of advancement isn't measured by what they can achieve when everything works perfectly. Dr. Lyrix explained in her groundbreaking work on xenosociology. It's measured by what they can achieve when everything goes wrong. Humanity's role in the galaxy evolved as well. Rather than being seen as primitive or as conquerors, they became known as catalysts, a species that triggered change simply by being themselves. Their tendency to question, to challenge, and to find unconventional solutions made them invaluable partners in the new galactic order. The butterfly projects, once weapons of last resort, were transformed into tools for progress. Controlled chaos was deliberately introduced into stagnant systems to spark innovation. Failure simulation became a standard practice in development, with species deliberately seeking out ways their systems could break in order to make them stronger. Even the Confederation's most conservative members had to admit that their civilization had grown more in the decade since the transformation than it had in the previous million years of perfect stability. New art forms emerged that celebrated imperfection. Scientific breakthroughs multiplied as researchers learned to pursue unlikely possibilities rather than perfect solutions. Ambassador Ven, addressing the 10th anniversary of the transformation, summed up the galaxy's new understanding. "We thought humanity was evolution's wild card, an unpredictable element that threatened our perfect order. We were right about them being a wild card, but wrong about what that meant. They weren't a threat to evolution. They were its agents, reminding us that the universe's greatest constant is change itself." The final proof of this new philosophy's success came from an unexpected source. Deep space sensors detected signals from previously unknown civilizations, drawn to investigate the sudden burst of innovation and development emanating from Confederation space. Species that had hidden from what they saw as the Confederation's stifling perfection now emerge, eager to participate in this new era of dynamic growth. The galaxy wasn't stagnant because we had achieved perfection, researcher Thal noted in his final archive entry. It was stagnant because we had stopped growing. Humanity didn't just save us from our perfection. They saved us from our fear of imperfection. As humanity and the Confederation looked toward the future, they recognized that they had achieved something far greater than either civilization could have managed alone. They had created a new understanding of progress itself, not as a path toward perfect stability, but as an endless journey of adaptation, innovation, and growth. The wild card had changed the game, and the universe was better for it.